Hey, John, thank you for coming back to the show. We left off with a cliffhanger, and a lot has happened since then. For this is our part four
Yes.
of this series of what's been going on.
Yes.
And I just want to remind the audience, and I'll be reminding them multiple times throughout the show, that in the description section of this video and all the videos that I have with John, there are links to his website. And you click that link and you'll be able to purchase his periodical. You can set up for a reading. He has a ton of information to share. So please click the link and support John's work. He also has more than 50 books and he's constantly writing. So go and purchase those books. But please, in the description of this video, click the link and help John out. And I'll be premiering this multiple times on YouTube. So far, the last two shows I've been able to keep up on YouTube, so that's a good thing. And of course, the audience knows to also see your content that I've done with you on Rumble, Bitchute, and Brighteon. So, John, thank you for coming to the show again. This is part
Thanks.
four, and the cliffhanger was December 1st, 2023.
Yeah, why don't you actually, I think it'd be good for you to introduce that again to the audience at large to kind of set it up, because we ended the show last time 2 weeks ago talking about you had some premonitions or issues, some of them related to perhaps Hebrew or Israeli prophecy and all that. Run that through and then I'll start.
Okay. So for the audience that doesn't know, from about August 1st, I've had this feeling from August 1st all the way through November 30th of this year, where there's been kind of this dark cloud over not just my life, but other people that I know tangentially that I call the sensitives. Okay. That can sense something that's going on. And that in September was when in the Jewish faith, near the end of September, where Rosh Hashanah starts and then it launches into Yom Kippur. And then after that, there's Sukkot. And then after that, there's Simchas Torah. And that happens to end in Israel on October 7th. Outside of Israel, it actually is October 8th. There's 2-day holiday outside of Israel. Well, it's a 1-day holiday in Israel. So the attack happens on October 7th. It so happens that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we couldn't blow the shofar because it was the Sabbath. And you're not supposed to blow the shofar, but the shofar silences the great prosecutor, or people, Satan is how we pronounce it, but people would say Satan. And when you don't do that, there is the potentiality, a high potentiality of that year, at least starting poorly for the Jewish people. All right, maybe even the whole year, but at least, at the very least, it's a bumpy start.
And may I just interject for non-Jewish people, the year being the Jewish year, which starts in October, right?
Well, it's on Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh
It's on
Hashanah,
Rosh
yeah.
Hashanah, and it changed because it's on a lunar cycle.
Right.
Sometimes it's in September,
September.
sometimes it's in October. In this case, Rosh Hashanah was actually in September.
Okay.
All right, but Simchas Torah happens on October 7th. All right,
Okay.
so this holiday season runs from the end of September all the way into the beginning of October.
So early autumn 2023 to early autumn 2024 for the solar calendar, just so people who are not knowing that know.
Right. So from there,
this year
right,
of
right,
getting
right,
to a bad start.
right. So okay, so this big event that happened in the Middle East on October 7th, in the middle of this dark feeling that I've been telling people to watch out, and there's something happening on that I felt that there was an ending that's taking place on 11:30, and a beginning of a dark cloud that is going past the sensitives and onto the wider world. All right, and that happens on December 1st. Okay, so that just happened. It just so happens that this year, December 1st is it coincides with the 19th of Kislev. Kislev was when the Alter Rebbe starts his cycle for the Tanya. And the Tanya, this is a Hasidic, very, very holy person, all right, published his work in 1796. So this really deep Hasidic Sefer book, all right, reached the wider audience, but the jewels of the book go all the way back to the three pillars that were brought down at Mount Sinai. And the three pillars was Kabbalah, mm-hmm. the oral Torah, and the written Torah. Mm-hmm. Now, most people understand, okay, the written Torah, that's the scrolls that people might have seen. The oral Torah was oral until the destruction of the temple, and then it was codified, right? And that's the Mishnah, and then expounded in the Talmud. And then the Kabbalah, which is kind of the mysticism on, all the kind of the esoteric aspects of Judaism. And the thing is that other religions have elements of Kabbalah in it. Christianity has some Kabbalah in it. Obviously Judaism, the Quran has it. So there's like a center core of that religion comes from, and that is this Kabbalistic essence or core. All right. So the Tanya is coming from that Kabbalistic core and trying to digest it in pieces for people to understand it. So you can view it as like almost the universe can be tapped into through like machine language. And that machine language is Kabbalah. But it's really hard to really understand it versus object-oriented programming would be easier to understand versus machine language, which is just ones and zeros. Well, if you could read just the ones and zeros, you would understand what it's doing, but it's hard for an individual to understand it. So you can manipulate letters, the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, in certain ways with certain permutations, and you actually create things. All right, that's the mysticism of Kabbalah. So this Tanya book is released in 1796, and the Alter Rebbe's the 19th of Kislev is a really important date of this knowledge coming to the wider audience. Okay, this Kabbalistic texts, they were for only an elite group, and it stayed an elite group, and there was actually infighting within the Hasidic movement. Why are you publishing something that should stay secret? And the idea is that the Alter Rebbe basically said mankind needs this because they're drifting away. They need this to get back to the source and be better people, And so, all right, so that's the 19th of Kislev Hebrew date, which happens to coincide with this December 1st. Okay, now everything is kind of related. People would say, well, it's slightly off, out of alignment, but you got to remember the Hebrew date starts sundown of a day. The day starts not at sunrise, it's sunset. And so that's where maybe some people that are more focused on the solar calendar say, well, it seems like it's not aligned right, but it's because of the setting of the start of the new day is really sunset, not sunrise. So the 19th of Kislev is a really, really important day. So, you know, and other sensitives have been saying stuff like October 24th is an important date. I don't know why, but, but I didn't sense that. But the thing is that I had this feeling that August 1st all the way to 11:30 was going to be tumultuous for the sensitives, and that we needed to prepare, meaning the sensitives, to get the influx of something that was coming in December. On December 1st is this influx of energy, or this flux of something. Okay, then I find out about 2 weeks into the end of this 11:30 cycle about the 19th of Kislev and the Alter Rebbe in this text about Tanya. Okay. From there, then I've had these thoughts that the sensitives are to be preparing themselves for this flux of energy, and that each of us, I'm going to be kind of poetic here, hopefully you'll appreciate it. People know about a menorah, and there's people light this on Hanukkah, right? Well, there was a menorah in the temple. All right, this was like, and in the synagogues, you're supposed to have, especially the Orthodox synagogues, you'll have an oil lighting there of some lights. I don't know if I think it's 5 lights or 6 lights. I can't remember, but
well, the
that
menorah
should
is 8,
be,
isn't it? Isn't menorah 8?
But
Okay.
but that right. No, you're right about that, because the extra oil and created an extra, you're right about that.
Okay.
So, but the menorah in the temple was 7. Okay. Now, but in the shul, I've seen 5 or 6 the lights, and I don't know if there's a reason why that is. I don't know the details on why that is. I think the shul that I go to, I think it's 5 actually, and it's an Orthodox shul, so they're doing the right thing. So I don't know why the number difference. If maybe it doesn't even matter, since the temple is destroyed. But the menorah in the temple, all right, had this regular lighting that took place every day. Okay, and certain parts of the day, my understanding is that one part of the service, or the morning service, it was like the first 5, and then the midday service, it was the last 2 or 3, something like that. It was 4 to 3 or 5 to 2. I don't remember, and that might be the reason why they only have 5 lighting. I'm not sure. So, but there was a separation of when it wasn't the whole menorah at any given moment, is my point. So there's kind of an internal menorah in us. And so and the whole idea is that if, how do I want to describe it? There is a light, an or Ein Sof, infinite, or meaning light of the infinite. All right, so you have the infinite, but we can't attach to the infinite. We can only get pieces of the pieces of the light, because it's very radioactive the closer you get to Ein Sof. So or Ein Sof goes through constriction. Those constriction points, that constriction mechanism is called symptom. So the symptom is these multiple constrictions that bring the light to a point where we can benefit from it, because it's too, using human terms, too radioactive for us to be close to it. All right. Now, we have kind of an internal menorah in us, in our soul, that is lit by this symptom of the or Ein Sof, that is going to be kindled through this influx. And what is interesting, and I just found this out on space.com, I believe it's Lou Dobbs from CNN that owns it. But on space.com, they said that there was some sort of major coronal mass that ejected out on November 29th or 28th. and that it was
It was red. It was a lot of red light in it, I think.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because red's not a red. I believe is Reuben's tribe.
Huh.
All right.
Reuben
So
red. Yeah.
so um so there's some weird stuff going on even with, and there's no way to have predicted a coronal mass that happened on November 28th or 29th or whatever when we were talking, let alone when I've been saying between August 1st to November 30th there's going to be this, there's this there's this we're we're moving into a different era.
Mm.
And that people that were the bellwethers, the sensitives, were the ones that these during that time period, it was pretty tumultuous. I knew people that lost their teeth. I've known people that passed away during this time period, or had difficulties financially or health issues or whatever, right? So the sensitives, it wasn't a positive thing that was going on.
Mm.
But the thing is that it almost, this thing that was going on with them, it helped to, if they had a good soul, because not all sensitives are good. There's some sensitives are a little bit more nefarious, or a little bit more on the evil side or judgmental side. But if they
Hitler was a sensitive.
right. Well, yeah,
A channel. He was definitely a major channel.
Right. So, but you see my point here.
Yes.
So individuals can prepare themselves for this influx of energy or knowledge after going through a tumultuous period in their life between August 1st to November 30th. Okay, so now what it means for the rest of the world, and a subset, the sensitives, going beyond December 1st, my understanding is that the sensitives now that have prepared themselves are capturing this flux of energy or knowledge, trying to kindle their internal menorah. Now, it so happens that Hanukkah, sometimes it's at the end of the year, the solar year, sometimes it's early. This year it's early, and it starts on the 7th. So December 7th. So this is moving us, and I said that Kislev is a real, Kabbalistically, Kislev, because of the Alter Rebbe, is a really important Kabbalistic month. We're moving into the end of the month of Kislev, and Hanukkah straddles both months. Kislev, the tail end of Kislev, and I don't remember the name of the Hebrew month for the next month. I'd have to look it up. But it's straddling it right into the beginning of the next month. So you're lighting the internal menorah, and you're moving into the next month to try to gain this knowledge, and this very holy Kabbalistic month of Kislev, it starts to set. Right. So
when does it set?
I believe it's 29 days. So the 19th, we're already the 20th. The 20th. So we have 9 days left.
Okay.
8 or 9 days left.
That's right. Because the full moon is coming up at let me just see briefly here. Yes, it's on the 26th. It's on Boxer Day, the full moon.
Yeah. So here's so that's what's happening with the sensitives. Now, what's happening with the non-sensitives and the rest of the world at large is there's this dark cloud. It's not a dark cloud that's super thick all at once, but over time it gets darker and darker. And in the news, I sense that we're marching towards global conflict, global financial problems, that will really rock the foundation of the pillars of security that people thought they had in Western society. They think that their health and their wealth and all, and their military prowess and all this is, these pillars of support. And they're, to use a term that is in the Bible and in prayer books. You know, the mountains that melt like wax.
Mm.
You know, something similar
Mm.
is the probability of it seems to be
The
getting
melting
higher
of
here.
structures, the melting
Yeah,
of
yeah,
solid mountains of dogma, the melting of
yeah.
economic givens, the melting of, I mean, I think from this, there's a lot of to unpack, and I think that kind of, I feel like ready. I can now respond to it. Yes, the between August and the turn of this month, some pretty significant things are unraveling. That is an end of one thing, a creation of something new. The Ukrainian war is about to collapse. It's maybe within days, weeks. So that is one situation. The other situation is that it was very significant that the 30th was the day before. Let's see. I believe the 30th was the day. Was it a Friday, the 30th?
Friday was the let me double check. I think so. Hold on.
Yeah, I think it
No,
was.
no, no, no. The 30th was Thursday.
Okay.
But you
Well,
gotta, you know, yeah, yeah. Thursday solar
what,
calendar deal. You know,
yeah,
it's a Thursday.
what happened? Let me just check my chart here because it's easier to see. I'll just be off camera for a moment just to look at this. Um, the Today, okay, there it is. All right. Yeah, the 24th. That's very interesting. The 24th had some interesting stuff happening. That is when I think the ceasefire began. It lasted, it was extended. The ceasefire in Gaza was extended to 7 days. So the ceasefire officially ended. I think we've been through the first and second days past it, and it's rather significant that the Zionist government of Netanyahu had betted their integrity, their credibility. We will never have a pause. We will never have a ceasefire. And I mean, over our dead bodies, will there be a ceasefire? But there was also, and there's growing more and more, the pressure all over the world is in a world where we actually are seeing acts of genocide before our eyes. Especially if you go on X, which is not censored and filtered, you get to see it all, and other sources of mine. And so I'm going to start in loose ends and come to the center of this, because what we're dealing with is people who presume a perception of leadership who do not have it, people who have an idea that their mountain of Zionism cannot be melted. A Israeli prime minister, Bibi Netanyahu, who had and his cabinet had reacted to the initial October 7th raid of Hamas with such overreaction, invoking the Hannibal solution, where the thing that was the cause of this trigger of all this pent up, almost racist hatred for Palestinians, even to the highest levels of government, beginning to quote Samuel, book of Samuel, chapter 15, when Samuel is saying that this is the same thing as the Amalekites. I mean, here's Bibi Netanyahu quoting in his speeches in Hebrew the statements of Samuel speaking for the Lord of hosts on what you do to eradicate, kill all the people, the men, the women, the babies in their arms, and then reduce them all, including their livestock. And a complete wipeout, genocidal act. Now we can debate the ethics depths of this or not. But the point is that here is this man, Netanyahu, spouting this to the world. The whole world's seeing him going biblical, going think Amalek, which was his threat to Iran many years ago, which we talked about in earlier shows because of a mistranslation when Ahmadinejad, the president, had made a statement that was translated wrong because they don't have a word for it. He was talking about how the political map that Israel would be, well, the one-state solution, basically. So he said Israel would no longer be a political reality. He did not say wipe it off the map. But that's what the Iranian translators equated it in English. And of course, Netanyahu just took off and ran with it. And now it's clear, because of what happened on October 7th and 8th, that he was behind his offices sending that message, think Amalek, Iranians, because here he is quoting it. So it came directly from him, as I had intuited many years ago. I said, no, this is from, he's trying to hide behind his office, the presidential office, but it's from him. So it came out. So important things come out. Things that are suppressed are revealed. Things, but all of this that has led to, I would say we are approaching 30,000 dead Palestinian civilians. Another 1,000 died in the first day. It was 109, and it got up to 1,000 in the second day. The Khan Yunis attack may have taken out 1,000 civilians in all those new buildings that were built by Qatar. And I watched it. It was terrible. It was all these gravity bombs coming in, US built. There's a big pressure for the United States because the whole world is saying your bombs. It's Israel's shooting them, but they're your bombs. And there is, if your listeners and watchers watch a lot of the mainstream press, it's even getting hard for them to completely put a lid on that. Just as it's getting hard for them to put a lipstick on the pig that is the loss in Ukraine, big loss for NATO. So these things are coming to a head. And the thing that dawned on me, that the thing that triggered this genocidal fever of the leadership of Israel to once and for all eradicate the problem. I mean, about 1 million Palestinians were forced to move under fire to the safe zone, which is southern Gaza, and now they're bombing and pounding southern Gaza, like they were doing northern Gaza, and people are dying. And Amalek is invoked. But what triggered this outrage and all this pent-up hate that has been there about greater Israel, and how we've talked about in earlier shows that the seed, I looked at it again, all the seed of Abraham is the same seed, whether it's coming from Hagar or the serving woman of Sarah or Sarah herself. And I kept reading it after our show to make sure I was seeing that right, and it does not in the first. And I clarified, I'm currently a few days away from producing my next Hogue prophecy report, which is going to further go into this, that the promised land prophecies in I think it's in those the first 3 messages of the Lord of Hosts to Abraham are, I think more important than all the others that came after, because they're the foundation of it, because they were given before Isaac was born. So it was given to Ishmael, who would have been the first Semite, in this group. Isaac was not born yet. So it changes. It's just like this. When I look at UFO reports, when I look at the Hopi prophecies, things that have become popularized, and when I wrote my highly popular little book, the Essential Hopi Prophecies, which is available on Amazon, I made sure that I only wrote about what the Hopi elders said back in the 40s and what the couple white messengers, that the good Pahana, also said at the beginning. Because what has happened since then is when it's gone viral now, it's just like what's happened in the field of Nostradamus, which I'm a long party of, is that now everybody's an expert. And most people they just embellish they don't know how to critically think. They don't know how to research. They just make shit up. And it becomes more myth and more myth. And so in a lesser sense, the things that are stated later to clarify the initial statements, I think are not, my sense, my light, inner light of that stream of light, my menorah says that the first three statements the Lord of hosts gave to Abraham make it very, before both children, Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael was alive and older. I don't know how many years older, but he was definitely out, and Isaac was still a dream. When he said all the seed of Abraham, he meant what has been mistaken as Eretz Israel, Greater Israel. That's what the Zionists call it. But it's not that. It's all the seed of Abraham. The seed is not changed by which womb it sprouts in. It's still the seed of Abraham. That's the argument I make in my new articles. That, to get all caught up in the ventris, the vessel of how it comes out, is, to me, the way I interpret it is that he meant all of these lands listed are the lands of the Semitic people, my chosen people, which happen to be sprouting from Ishmael and from Isaac. So this whole thing of this struggle between Ishmael can't be right because he came out of a serving girl, somebody of a lower class than Sarah. So there's where all the class politics start coming into it. So here you have a situation where what triggered all of this rather racist explosion, this catharsis of hatred for the Palestinians, and let's have a final solution for them. Not even thinking how that parallels to what happened back in the 40s. But they're blinded by anger and rage, and Netanyahu is losing it, unhinged. But the truth is that what triggered him and Yoav Gallant to say they're all animals, those Palestinians, we cut off their water, we cut off their food, we cut off their fuel. I mean, these are brazen acts of collective punishments, of war crime. And he was saying they're all animals. So all that ugliness that's always been repressed, and that's what comes up in these kind of that's what that darkness is. We're in a time where things are getting exposed to the air by events, things that have been followed, like, this encroachment for decades of NATO lying through their teeth, saying they're never intending to encroach and threaten Russia. Russia saying, please stop. If you go to the borders of Ukraine and Georgia, we will have to go to war with you. If you keep advancing right up to our borders, like Napoleon, like Hitler, like Charles XII of Sweden, it's going to be war. We don't want that. Let's talk. Well, NATO wasn't listening. Now we have war. And now NATO is losing the war. Ukraine is about to collapse. And it could collapse before the end of the year. That's how it's when attrition wars break, it is sudden. It's like, oof. And then Russia has built its army now to 2.2 million, with 1.3 million not in reserve but active. So now and why such a big army with all the tanks and stuff? Because they are seeing the potential that NATO wants to directly go to war with them. And America. So they are ready just in case. Hopefully it won't happen, but they're ready. So so it's always been for the Russians bigger than mere Ukraine. Ukraine is just the whipping boy. Ukraine is the proxy. Similarly, Hezbollah plays proxy in this theater of operation, but we'll get back to that. The 1,200 Israeli citizens that were killed in the first day, the highest number of Israeli citizens of Jewish descent killed in any day of any battle, of any wars since 1948. The shock that was heard in outrage across Israel and the world is based on a friendly fire event of Israeli forces blowing up, helicopters coming in and shooting down and blowing up masses of people they saw running around, whom the Israeli IDF command did not tell these poor boys coming in with their helicopters to shoot anything that moves. Because of this breakout, they thought these are all these people running around with the Hamas people. They're trying to escape us. That have come out. They said that they're all the people that are coming out. It's the return. It's all that they thought they were all Palestinians flooding into Israel with Hamas people in them, as making them human shields, and they were shooting them all. But they were the people in the rave, the Nova rave, that was a peace rave, so it's like a 24-hour dance. And then that dawn, when it was ending, the breakout, suddenly the Hamas people are running into these people, and they didn't even know who they were. What's this going on? So, but it was, long story short, of the 1,200 people that were killed on that first day, Israelis, over 80% of them were killed by Israelis. And I have many links to the videos and a lot of this to make this argument. So what I would be saying to Netanyahu, if I could hold his hand and calm him down, is say, look, you've invoked Samuel and a solution to the Palestinians equivalent to the Amalekites. That's pretty hard, terrible thing you've just declared, and it's based on your wrong-headed thinking about what happened. Most of those Jews were killed by Jews in helicopters who were not told by the command of the IDF about the rave. They didn't know about it. So much for this vaunted. If ever there's something we can learn from this, one of the things is that the Israelis decided to ignore human intelligence and rely mostly on artificial intelligence to monitor and guide and decide what's a threat or not. We talked about that earlier, that Hamas had figured out that they were going mechanical, and there now is even more. Haaretz and others have posted more reports about the Financial Times as well, about how mostly women IDF soldiers were the guards observing and monitoring the prison wall. And they had been, over a week or so before this all happened, they were constantly saying, look, there's something happening. So they were going to their main intelligence officer, calling him, saying, look, there's something, they're going to do something. And they absolutely, and one of them said, if we were men reporting this, they would have listened to us, but because we were women, they didn't listen to us. And some of those Israeli women soldiers survived what happened, and now the pucky's going to hit the fan about that. So that's another element about these things, where we have now entered. So this whole war, we're not going to listen to anybody, we're going to go all the way, we don't care what the world thinks, it's us against the world, which that's what that says, and we're over our dead bodies. Will we make America pressure us to do a ceasefire? They call it a pause, but folks, it's a ceasefire. And they did it. So that, morally speaking, could be the beginning of the end of this whole terrible conflict. Although I must warn you that it's in the field of prophecy, people like me point to the moment when things really turned, but that can be misconstrued to mean, oh, it's all going to calm down, everything's fine. No, it could, the very fact that Netanyahu has lost, whether he doesn't consciously know this, the fact that they buckled and they had a ceasefire means there's going to be more ceasefires. And so we're in a pattern now where horrendous destruction and genocide is going to happen. The world's going to get more pissed off. And the pressure will be forcing Israel again, the Zionist government again, to give more pauses. Because the one thing the people of Israel, and I mean a lot of people in Israel, are not happy with this government and what they're doing. I got to make this point. It is wrong to identify Zionism as Judaism. I would contend that the majority of Jews in the world are not Zionists. The whole Zionist concept, as I explain with their own quotes that we've painfully had to listen me read, is that Zionism is a kind of fascism. And not only did I say that, but as in earlier shows in 1948, I presented the letter from Einstein and other Jewish Zionist thinkers who were thinking of Zionism as, let's have a homeland. But then they were afraid of the other Zionists who would say, let's make this apartheid fascist state where we are not only the chosen people, but the master race of God. And then we have Jabotinsky, the father of the right wing Likud kind of feeling about this, which is in power now with Netanyahu, and even more extreme people in his coalition than Likud could even dream of being. The problem has been that there was this quote that I said last time, and I'm actually condensing them in this new article, that Jabotinsky actually says there's a law that exists more than God, more than the holy. He said, the land. And again, he was literally letting the cat out of the bag, which was what a lot of people were pointing to him and the other Likud, Menachem Begin, all is what makes Zionism anti-Judaic in a way is that it is politicized. It's a bunch of people who are basically atheists who are hiding behind the idea of the chosen promised land as a political means to gain more power and expansion and take out the lesser Semite races. So it's trying to be a wannabe Aryan, just like Hitler was trying to be a wannabe chosen of God. And it's the same sick mindset. It was in the Germans, it's in the Ukrainians, which is a Nazi regime. And now, because there's a coup about to happen in Ukraine, Zaluzhny, the general, is kind of being set up to be the next president. And if he is the next president, then the mask comes off, because his chief advisor is Nazi Ukrainian #1, Dmytro Yarosh, the founder and creator of Pratli Sector, Right Sector, those red and black flags that you see in Ukraine. That is the ultimate fascist Ukrainian movement. They are responsible, with the help of Victoria Nuland and the State Department of Barack Obama, and to this day, his vice president, now President Biden, in a fascist takeover that took over the Yanukovych elected government of Ukraine and replaced it and changed the system of government so that every president since, Poroshenko being one, they won't let him out of Ukraine. He got stopped at the border. He's trying to get out. And Zelensky. These are the two presidents that have happened after the transitional government. But what they did in the Rada is they set it up under fascist rules. They banned all the other parties, just like Hitler did. They banned all opposition newspapers. And I mean, Ukraine is exactly like Nazi Germany. When people talk about how it's defending democracy, my God, how far reality has fallen. It is exactly a return of Nazi Germany. And unfortunately, this is the period most of my prophetic life in this life, I've been saying the 2020s, watch out. Fascism will return. The cycle of its return is here. I started saying it would come as a different mean. It would be like a globalist aristocracy of elite, wealthy people who want to make a global society. It would sometimes find itself overtaking countries that have a very passionate religious basis to them, like Israel, like Iran, maybe. ISIS is kind of a version of Wahhabist fascism, Islamic fascism, and that has come and been kind of suppressed for now. Now it's rising up in Zionism in Israel. And so, based on a blunder and not follow and an instant explosion of emotion, this government has moved pell-mell into a situation where it's now set itself up with, if it can't do what it wants to do to the Palestinians, which it's always wanted to do to them, all the quotes going to the beginning of Zionism back me up. Now they got their chance. Now's the time. Now or never. And there's a quality of now or never in this darkness, which is kind of at the point of being exposed in many things. I mean, it's going to be exposed very soon in the world economy through the key is the derivatives markets, which have been, if I understand correct, I'm not a financial person, but I don't fly planes either. Neither did Nostradamus. He foresaw them. He doesn't know how to fly. Does that mean his prophecy doesn't work? Well, in a similar way, I don't understand the mechanics of derivative markets, and I've come to understand, and most people don't. But it's basically playing a game with debt. And if you play the game right and kind of forecast trends, you make a profit off of money that's actually, it's not, you make a profit off something that's a debt, which sounds very sick to me. And so what happens is more and more there's more and more debt. There's more and more chances for those people to derive some kind of profit from seeing where all that debt is going. But the reality is it's non-existent. So one day happens where suddenly trillions of dollars that you've been playing with one day disappears. It's one day it's there. It's like a self-induced jubilee. It's just gone. So it's going to happen in Europe worse, but it's coming here too. So this is also, interestingly enough, because of November 30th, a lot of things started rolling, the Iran war is about to collapse. And then we have this thing that might be the very end of the Israeli state as we've known it. Israel has lost credibility in the world. And the more this lasts, the more they try to kill all these men, women, and children of a lesser Semitic race, because God told them. This is the end of Israel as we've known it. Some of my sources are saying that they think Israel will not exist. after this. It will, I can tell you already that hundreds of thousands of people who are dual citizens of Israel are leaving. And that's another structural issue that people don't understand, is that AIPAC, which is the lobbyists for Israel, have got a break where they don't have to sign up as foreign agents for a foreign country. So AIPAC has bought and sold most of the Congress, presidents of the United States. Jeffrey Epstein was an asset of Mossad, as was his lover, whose father was a major asset. And there was, even when Jeffrey Epstein got off really easy on his first trials in Florida for underage women and prostitution, all of that, he got off easy, and the guy that was trying to really stick him in jail forever, he said, "What happened?" He said, "No, he's an Israeli asset. Can't do anything." Can't. And what is he an asset of? One of the things that Mossad, I mean, I've often said Mossad is great at collecting data, but I'm not very impressed at how they interpret their data, because you have to be a watcher of yourself and your own, what you want to find in data. Data collecting is wonderful, but I know this so well now in the world of Nostradamus, that there's all this data, and because these prophecies are nebulous, you can very easily find what you're looking for. It takes a real skill over many decades to learn not to do that, but you have to know yourself. If the agent doesn't know themselves, then it's very easy for a lot of great data to be misinterpreted, like those poor women discovered watching Hamas coming over the walls. Or these poor people who, Israeli intelligence officers, who literally said, "If you go above my head, you'll be going to prison." And so, the mindset of the intelligence officer can destroy the whole thing. That's why the CIA has been crap for 20, 30 years. They can't do anything right, because they're great analysts. Some of them read me for decades, but I can feel their pain, because they're getting it right. Nobody no, make it nicer for the president, otherwise he'll be upset. Don't tell him that. Well, isn't that my job? I have to be the bearer of bad news sometimes for the sake of the country. No, that's where it started happening during the Reagan years. So a lot of the assets that I work with, I mean, I don't know them personally, but I cite them as sources. Maybe someday I'll meet Larry Johnson and people like Scott Ritter, who is a U.S. Marine intelligence officer, former, and weapons inspector. But there's a pattern of what a lot of them are saying, is that it shifted in the 1980s, and they were no longer there to be critical and be the devil's advocate. They were there to kiss up and make every president happy and not give them reality. And you can see from the 80s on how, I mean, we've been a mess in our foreign policy, but we've got away with it, because where else can the world go to when the US dollar is the reserve currency? You just kind of shine it on with the Americans and tolerate them, because if you don't, they slam IMF on you and all that, destroy your economy. And that's gone now. That's gone when the Saudis broke away from the petrodollar being solely used. They started buying renminbi, Chinese, and now opened them up to any currency that wants to use them. So the US dollar lost its commodity that makes it of value, Saudi oil. And this is the most significant crack in the meltdown of the mountain of dogmas, and this is how it is, and this is reality, that has hit. I mean, I warned it a while back. This is it. This is now will be the rapid decline of the United States, because now a whole different financial system is being built. China and Russia was forced to abandon the Western economies by the sanctions, and now they're doing great. The Chinese are rapidly selling off all their US bonds, getting rid of all of them, because they see this coming, this thing with the derivatives coming. And so this is I would call it potentially the greatest depression, something like what happened in Germany in 1923 and 24, a century ago, when there could be a great inflationary moment there. They don't last long, but they, your cup of coffee costs $1 billion. And it gets to a point where it's just obscene. It's like, here's a suitcase full of money. Can I have my tea? And it doesn't last long. And but we're in the centenary of that. We might actually repeat it. And so the United States cannot make money anymore and go and spend beyond its means. And it's funny how it's another big rock of reality that's coming down, is that the everybody thinks that the military industrial complex, even a lot of my good sources are kind of not seeing this, where they'll keep going, they'll keep doing, they'll try to expand to new wars. Well, yeah, of course they are. I mean the one news that came out today was that the real reason, it was Lloyd Austin kind of let the cat out of the bag. As somebody said, he's a bit thick, but he's very upfront, because he's not subtle enough not to let the cat out of the bag. But he pretty much stated something today, which shows that the real motivation for this war with Ukraine, with the Russians, was to start a new Cold War, so that the military industrial complex could, we got an emergency here, and now we got to build more shells, 4 times more than we do, and we got to modernize. They're talking about how they're going to modernize the military industrial complex of the United States, and it shows that it's time, and let's invest. And they're all thinking from a point of view is that the total, 800 plus billion, if you add to that the security defenses, the black operations and all that, you're talking 1.3 trillion a year for secret operations and special forces operations, and then the Army, Navy, and the Marines, and all those 800 to 1,000 bases where the sun never sets on an American not so good weapon anymore, as this war has proved. But they're trying to spin that around as, that's because we got to renew. It's just like what happened in Pearl Harbor. We had to, do something and get it bigger, and because we're in this long-term conflict with China and Russia, and so it's to make a buck. But the problem is, in the next 2 years, the United States dollar, which could spend itself on deficit spending, because everybody was buying bonds. Not anymore. So what does that mean? I mean, even I can understand this, that it was not an economist, that, that shell game's over. And what does that mean? That means America will inflate, and what was $1.3 trillion will be the equivalent of $5 trillion a year, maybe $20 trillion, and you cannot afford it. So the military industrial complex is going to also be one of those big rocks melting down. I always saw America's hegemony ending because the dollar could not bear the deficit spending anymore. And then it's suddenly gone. You can't even afford to it'd be like what happened to Russians and their bases around Russia. They weren't being paid anymore. They weren't getting any food and water. They had to leave, because it was the ruble was dead, and just collapsed. And the United States has got all these bases all over the world. And if they spend too much, it's inflationary and it blows the economy. If they spend too little, then these guys can't sustain themselves. So a whole lot of U.S. military assets are coming home to a junk heap. And so this military industrial fantasy of using this as a new Cold War, people still think that they can keep publishing worthless fiat money. No, we are going down like the Soviet Union went down in the next 2 years because of this. So that's a big thing happening. And I would say things have definitely kind of built of darkness from August, built like big black clouds. And now the thunder clouds are unleashing reality. And people are getting all uncomfortably wet in the flashing lightning of illuminating this dripping wet realities that we have thought were true, which are not. They're limp noodles, and that got too much water in the rain. And so now I'll give you an astrological dimension to this. This Pluto is not just significant in its returns to the birth position it had 248 years ago in the birth of the United States, but because the United States is such a pivotal capstone to this whole mountain pyramid this Ponzi pyramid scheme that's going to melt down. That's why this coming home to its birth point is a rebooting of not only just America, but the whole global system that America has been the foundation of, especially since the World War II, and primarily in its hegemonic period of the last 32 years. So where we were the only thing in town. So we could abuse it any which way we want. And now the bill is coming. And so, but what's good about it is that the whole world is not stuck to the dollar anymore. So China will continue to flourish. Russia will continue to flourish. India will continue. The global South, which is Africa, South America, and Asia and all that, they are now seeing a world where they're not under US dollar tyranny. They're going to be doing business with each other, and America can go take a jump in the lake, financially speaking. So the West is losing its hegemony over the world that it's had building since 500 years. So it's like 500 years thing that's built, that's this era of of European dominance of the world. And there was the largest in the 1840s, the largest economy in the world was China. And then the British and the French came in with the Opium Wars and all, and they destroyed all that, broke it all up. But the largest per capita industry was China. In fact, that has been often the case throughout human history, that China has been the dynamo now. This is not something new. This is coming back to something that was the main flow of human development for millennia. That is Eurasia being the center of things, not the West. So, and Russia being a borderline, like Turkey, but really with its literally having one foot in Asia and 1 foot in Europe. I mean, Europeans trying to reject Russia as a European member is cutting 1/3 of the continent away from Europe. You just look at a map of Russia, 1/3 of Europe is European Russia. And so it's another way for Europe to cut its own nose off to spite its face, which it's been doing a lot. So what's now happening? It's going to happen in Israel. It's going to happen in America. It's going to happen in Europe. It's going to be a lot of soul searching. I would call this November 30th begins the great soul search of those who had been in power and domination of the world, who are now losing it, and rapidly. It's going to be such a shock. The danger is that a lot of unconscious people, not so sensitive people, as we're talking about, will take that shock and try to take, if my world cannot exist, I'd rather take it all down with me. So that's the big danger here. I said that the fact that Netanyahu's government morally lost already when they had to accept a ceasefire, which I said they never do. Well, that just showed, well, okay, you don't have the power to stop that. And then what eventually will happen, it will not have the power to kill all the Palestinians, because it's a good sign in our world. It wasn't there during the Holocaust last time, but in this current Holocaust of Semites, ironically, Jews killing Arab seed of Abraham, their cousin brothers and sisters, not the Aryans versus the seed of Abraham of the Jews the last time. So it's taken this next step of outrage and hypocrisy. But that, so there's the vast majority of people who don't want to change, and as the Hopi prophecies say, they would rather drop dead from their own fear of change than change. But there's also, though in a minority, their quantity of intelligence is far more bright as a light than all the darkness of people who just want to live like camels and machines and believe in all, even if it's true or not, they just believe rather than know. They believe in God rather than know God. And so that all of that is coming to a head in this major, we're now in, I think 2024 is the first year of really epoch ending, epoch beginning things. And we may not make it, because we're not the only civilization that's had to place ourselves upon the lathe of truth and see kind of blasted away, ground away all the bunk of at least the last 500 years, if not the last 4 million years of human existence. Because it's a death, it's also rebirth. It's a travail, but it's also rebirth. I mean, it's a theme I come back to a lot. But it is, Israel is now dying to be reborn. And it may return to not having it be a place. For instance, I talk about this too in my new articles. The third article is quite kind of wow. When I finished it, I said, man, that's like a transmission. That's interesting, but you will be the judges if any of you wish to go to HogueProphecy.com and see the samples free, and then join my for $60 for a year, or do an automatic payment of $5 a month. You'll be able to see these articles in their whole content. But I put out something that even I personally have a hard time agreeing to it, but the two-state solution is dead. It may be now a transitional transaction after the pieces are picked up. But I mean, there's certain scenarios that if all this stuff that's going on outside of the main focus of the terrible things going on in Gaza, the whole world's watching, the more important things not to forget is the insurrections that are going on in Iraq over American bases. You know, the fact that American bases in Syria who are illegally there, stealing all of Syria's oil since 2018, when the ISIS, they replaced ISIS. ISIS made finance. Ever wonder how the state, the Islamic State of ISIS, was able to function as a nation? Because it did for a few years there. It did so by selling Syrian oil and through the Turkish contacts in the black market, and they were paid in hard US paper cash. So the whole system was based on US cash. And and it worked. They did the promissory notes. And it was based on the oil they were stealing. Just like the oil of Saudi Arabia was based on the US dollar, their basis was also oil commodity. We only want US dollars. And so the whole Islamic State was run that way. And of course, when Syria invited the Russians to come in legally as an old ally to help them with ISIS, the first thing the Russians did was something the Americans didn't do for a year. Their jets were casting shadows over huge columns of oil trucks going off from Syria into Turkey. And the American jets were ignoring them. First thing the Russian jets did is they bombed and strafed all those oil tankers, blew them up. Big fires. Ended the whole dollar. So they, in a few days, pulled the plug on the Islamic State's ability to financially make its economy work. Okay, boom, so America got involved, and then America somehow managed to finagle itself with the death of ISIS into occupying the oil fields in northeastern Syria. And because of that, the Syrians can't create enough capital to rebuild their ruined country. That ISIS ruin and the Islamic civil war that happened is still on over 11, 12 years now, killed over 700,000 Syrians, displaced 10 to 20 million Syrians inside the country and beyond. And that has been the strategy of the Zionist state, that using America, and sometimes the dumb Americans even lose a lot of their people in these wars. They fight for Israel, for AIPAC, who has bought the United States presidency and the House and the Senate. I mean, this is how they do it. They say, they come, look, we'll give you money for your election, but if you go against them, if you're critical of what Israel's doing, they come to you and say, well, you know what? We're not going to give you that money this year. We found somebody who's pro-Zionist to run against you. And it's called, we're going to primary you. So you end up, if you don't surrender to the Israelis as the money is supposed to give you, then somebody will replace you in a new seat who will be a Zionist sympathizer. And so, I mean, one of the things should happen if we are going to take back our sovereignty as a country is, first off, let's be clear. One of the things that's going to be exposed about this is Israel has never been a sovereign country. It has required big, powerful, dumb backers like us, the United States, to effectively destroy Iraq and even lose 7,000 soldiers doing it, to keep all the more powerful up-and-coming Arab nations broken, bled out, in chaos. That is the way, a very toxic way, rather than solving your problems with your fellow Semite brothers and sisters, but and again, has a racist overtone, which is finally out. The wound stinks. Thank God it's in the air at last. Let us smell it deep and see it for what it is, so that the Israelis can be healed from their racism. It's an ancient racism, and it has come out. It is not at all a coincidence to me that of two things, that the Israelis of the Bible managed to completely wipe out the race of the Amalekites, a Holocaust, a successful Holocaust, wiped them out, nearly wiped out the Canaanites, nearly wiped out the Moabites. The ancient Hebrews were very good at stamping out whole races in their way. And that's why they're such fast allies with the United States, because we got away with the American Indians. We got away with wiping out the cultures of Native Americans and not having to pay a price for it. So there's a certain, we get each other. We may not want to really look at that ugly side, but there it is. And it's a wound for both America and both Israel. It's not surprising that the people who were so successful in eradicating entire races proudly posted in the Bible ended up in a Holocaust against a wannabe chosen one of God, Adolf Hitler, and his people. Wanted to be as exceptional as the chosen people of God, as exceptional as the United States, the exceptional nation. And what happens when you think you're exceptional and not just a human being like anybody else? You get away with murder, but it's okay. I'm exceptional. Who knows why God uses me as the instrument to wipe out the Amalekites? In fact, he says, we're going to use you Jews to do it, and who knows that America, the great city on the hill, has to eradicate those evil savages and those backwards people. And we are exceptional, so we have a right to go into your household, whatever country you are, and tell you how you should live. And if you don't do what we say, we stop giving you funds and money and aid. Well, now no one cares about our dollar, so that whole game's over. It's over. So it's not just Israel's having a comeuppance, it's the other people who got away with genocides and things, like the exceptional people, the Americans. They're also going to have this is the age of, after November 30th, of the great comeuppance. For a lot of things, if a bully ever becomes wise, he has to be knocked on his ass. It's like Alexander Mercouris of the Dran. He made this amazing statement, which is not as, when he makes statements like that, it's really worth listening, because he's very not at ease to go there. So when Alexander Cristofaro, his partner, asked the question, well, where do you think all this is going with Ukraine and NATO? It's like everything they're trying to do, it's clearly failed, but they keep stepping into the doo-doo deeper and deeper. And he said, well, he's kind of Greek, but he's raised in London. He says, well, might I say, I think what's going to happen is sometimes the only answer is that you've got to walk right in and get a bloody nose. It's like what von Clausewitz, the great military analyst, said, is all the great military plans are turned into air when the first shot is fired. Or my favorite is the variation that Mike Tyson said, a very interesting man. There's a lot going on there that the stereotypes really should be put aside. Very interesting man. Anyway, he did a show where he just kind of talked about his whole life, and I went, man, this guy is a kind of a genius. Genius of the hard knocks. And he said, so anyway, Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan how to fight, how to win a fight until they get hit in the mouth. So same, it's von Clausewitz. It's a little more, it's a little more vulgar, but vulgar means in Latin, the lowly people, so, but I don't know, common sense of the people who don't have lace and frou-frou and I'm so special just because I say so. Those are idiots and fools, fluffy fools. Down to earth folks, they have a wisdom that doesn't have all that frou-frou. So we are entering it's the point. The targets are, of course, the capstones of our times, which would be America using Israel as a way to keep the Middle East down, so they take the oil. That's all over. So what happens is there's a lot of, it's a tremendous opportunity as you're all feeling, oh my God, what's going to happen next? I mean, what's the world going to be like when I wake up tomorrow? It's going to be all different. A lot of fear, a lot of loathing, a lot of, God, what's going on? It's actually been building for the last decade, but is really coming to the head now in the 2020s, as I predicted it would. And even in 2024 is also a year that I've said with 2023, 2024 was when, and we really get to feel what the roaring 2020s roar like. The first was, 2020 was wild with COVID, and 2021 also wild with what was wrong with the cure of COVID, and many other things. I'm just picking one thread out of many, but and then you have this war in Ukraine. It's literally put us into another kind of conventional world war situation, and now we have the land of Armageddon joining into it, and which is very key biblically and prophetically. So when that started happening, I said, "Oh man, now my prophetic work has got times 10. Now I have to deal with all that stuff." So from Samuel to the book of Revelation and all that, and the Joaquin de Fiore's three great ages of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit stuff is all now playing and is engaged. So Ukraine is collapsing. Israel, the Zionist era is the beginning of the end of it. Now, what's also happening is the United Nations is becoming relevant again, which is a nice surprise. So a lot of the good things are happening is that people are getting on the streets all over the planet about Palestine, and it's real, and it's pressuring governments to change. It pressured the United States to actually try this all. Now they're kind of going to Netanyahu and say, just back it off a bit. Just don't hit targets that are really military. Don't take out 1,000 babies a day. It doesn't look good. We're losing credibility. Israel is becoming a pariah, and because we are what makes Israel possible to do these things that are making it a pariah, we are now becoming a pariah, America. So tone it down a little bit. And the push to shove that's going to happen, and I don't know if this government's got the capability, because of all its neocons and stuff that would like to jump off to this and go to war with Iran and wipe out Hezbollah, take down Syria, because they're on their list of kill list of regime changes where we destroy a country like Libya to save it. And so that is, there's some people in the State Department that are just licking their chops like, oh man, this is our last chance, because now that Ukraine's going down. So that's another danger, is that people are going, let's do as much mayhem as we can, get almost all our goals complete before Donald Trump becomes president and we're out of a job. Or Robert Kennedy Jr. becomes president and we're out of a job. Actually, if he becomes president, it'll even be more revolutionary. That's why I'm a little concerned about seeing what I saw in 1968 repeated firsthand. When Martin Luther King won all of his legal battles, the only thing left is something criminal. You silence him through violence. Same thing with Kennedy wanting to dismantle the CIA. If Robert becomes president, his uncle's assassination, all of that's going to be released. They won't be able to hide it anymore. So Kennedy was trying to actually end the Cold War, which was making a lot of money. I mean, it's odd, but Oliver Stone's movie JFK was a great inspiration to me, because it helped me actually learn how to write about Nostradamus, where you have to blend myth with fact. If you understand all the dimensions that myth is one of the richest words. It can, for some people, it means flim flam, fake. But if you really look at it, it in its higher meanings, it transcends fact and shares universal essence of a thing. That's why people learn. That's what was so wonderful in the Lord of the Rings, the journey of Frodo and Sam, two innocent, don't know, not clever people, just innocent people who just understood in their hearts that because they were innocent, who they were the only ones that could manage somehow in all the difficulties to get to the crack of doom and throw this evil ring into it and melt it and save the world. So there is a quality of myth. The myth is that, I mean, the things I take away from the great movie adaptation of Tolkien's book, which is also great. I mean, two things. Because I write scripts and understand the difficulties with movies. The I learned so much by watching the movies first and then reading Tolkien. So I wasn't dogmatized by my view how it should go. And I realized, I mean, some of the things that, well, I wish Ridley Scott, one of my favorite directors, had done this, but he didn't have that epiphany trying to get into the rabbit hole that is a movie on Napoleon Bonaparte. Stanley Kubrick wanted to do it. And I think he took years to prepare for it. I just saw a documentary where the amount of detail that he did to really know the background of this. Ridley Scott decided, no, I'm just going to go with the images. I'm not going to read books or anything like that. I mean, it worked. It worked for a lot of his other movies. He's a master filmmaker, but this is a disaster movie that he made. And I mean, Joaquin Phoenix I'm one of my favorite actors, but he's not his Commodus outshone everybody else in Gladiator. I mean, every time I watch Gladiator, as much as I love Russell Crowe's character and Connie Nielsen playing his Commodus's sister, that is a performance of the centuries, the way he played it. But it doesn't work when you're in your 50s playing all the stages of Napoleon as a young man and all that. So, you have the great statement that Napoleon made. It was beautiful how they did the whole Notre Dame coronation. It looks like it's a living version of David's painting of it, which I saw in person when I was in the Louvre in 1990. And so that was a moment of genius. But then poor Napoleon opens his mouth and he said, I found the crown of France in the dirt, and all I needed to do was pick it up and put it on my head. Now, would you follow into gunfire a guy that charge? Now, because I'm trying to get over the disaster of that movie, this earlier today, after many years not watching it, because this movie is getting a lot of attention as a comparison of a good Napoleon movie, is Waterloo, with one of my favorite actors playing Napoleon, Rod Steiger. Now, what made it was Peter Jackson's wife who had the epiphany of the writing team with Peter and all. Where do we go with this Lord of the Rings? There's so many ways we could go, but they're all like a Gordian knot. They take us into a dead ends. And she suddenly said, we follow Frodo. And it was like, that's it. Just make it that string of the complex orchestral narrative, make it the line of your story narrative. And it worked. So I learned so much from that because so what did Rod Steiger do when he got the part from Dino De Laurentiis? He said, first thing I did is I started researching, especially what ailed Napoleon in 1815, because it's really a story of a great military general who's burned out. And so he learned all the things that was happening to his body, and it did influence the Battle of Waterloo. I mean, he had a raging urine infection in the middle of that. I mean, that is a really uncomfortable thing to be standing there fighting a battle. And he had prophetically stated that, at Austerlitz, I realized that I've already had 10 major battles. It's such a stress to fight in war that I'm probably only good for like a 50 of these battles of this kind. And Waterloo was 50. He burned out, and but so you follow. It was, fortunately, that movie was only about the 100 days, so that when Napoleon escaped from Elba and tried to seize France back. It's a funny thing, I write about it in my updates of Nostradamus, his prophecies, because some of them allude to Napoleon a lot. I mean, Napoleon, I just also found out that a lot of people looked at him, Napoleon, that rhymes with Apollyon, the angel of the abyss, the demon of the abyss of Book of Revelation, Apollyon. And I think Nostradamus foresaw that, because Paul Né Laurent is Napoleon Roy. Roy, R-O-Y, is R-O-I in modern French. So Napoleone was his Corsican pronunciation of his name. He spoke fluent Italian as well as French, because he was half Italian, from Italian gentry. And so Napoleone Bonaparte, he francophiled it into Napoleon Bonaparte. So anyway, I thought that we needed to stray from the other themes and get to something else like Napoleon in movies. I hear, though, that Stanley Kubrick's scripts and preparations have all been given over by his family to Steven Spielberg, who is going to do a 10-part series based on Stanley Kubrick's work. Now, this isn't the first time that Stanley Kubrick's ideas didn't end up being a remarkably good Steven Spielberg movie. AI was a Kubrick concept, but artificial intelligence, one of the best futurist movies of Spielberg. And poor Steven Spielberg, everybody says, well, God, you kind of turned it looks like a Steven Spielberg movie. No, it's just the opposite. Kubrick said, look, I can see that what I'm not writing here is one of my movies. This sounds like something a Steven Spielberg would write. So you're Steven, I'm not going to have time to do this one. So he gave it to him, said, if you want to run with this, because I'm kind of writing it like it's you, go with it. So isn't it interesting, because that was so well done. And now maybe what has been called the greatest movie never made, Kubrick's Napoleon, maybe now I think it's Amazon or something, or Disney, they're going to let him do a 10-parter. I mean, you can't do Napoleon's life without it being at least 10-20 hours. So Steven's got the job, and I'm hopeful that
you want to hear something that's really weird that you picked up, and this is just for the ones that are watching. None of this is scripted. This is all free flow.
Spontaneous.
Right. This is all spontaneous, free flow. So you were talking about Lord of the Rings, right? And Steven Jackson. And I've watched the Lord of the Rings, the director's cut.
Yeah,
and then the commentary. Not
yes.
only did I watch
all the commentaries
I watched
brilliant.
I watched the release version, the original release version, the director's cut, and then the commentary.
Yeah.
Where they're doing, and I saw that for all three of the
me too.
movies.
I did them all.
Yeah, and so it's like 12 hours. It's like watching like each one of those like 12 hours. So yeah. I've spent about 36 hours of my life watching Lord of the Rings.
Me too.
So yeah. But remember when I was talking about that coronal mass ejection?
Yeah.
Well, there are pictures on space.com that shows this this dark, I'll call it a cavity, all right, on the sun, the surface of the sun, where
Hmm.
this coronal ejection happened.
Hmm.
It looks like the eye of Sauron.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. It looks like the eye of Sauron. So you're picking up on something that just happened
Yeah.
with the sun.
Yeah.
Then we were talking about this. We were early in the show. We were talking about the Tanya, right? And there are these
Yes.
different ribbies that
Yes.
came from the Alter Ribby. Well, the 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 next ribby was the middle ribby is what is considered the middle ribby, right? Mittler ribby
Yeah.
is what
Middle Earth.
Mittler ribby is the Yiddish, I believe. All
Okay.
right, now he was around from 1773 to 1827. So Waterloo was 1815, I think,
Yes,
or
and
somewhere in there.
also the
So
birth of the United States was 1776. So there's a little bit of that plutonian thing.
right. So the second ribby, right? So you had the Tanya, the writer of the Tanya, that was it, it, he worked on it for quite a while, but it was first published in 1796. All
Mm.
right,
Mm.
all right, and then the middle ribby comes on board when the Ultra ribby dies, and during the middle ribby's time, he was very again. This is where the Hasidic movement within Chabad, the Lubavitch, they they were siding with Russia
Mm.
and not with Napoleon.
Mm.
While there were many Jews that sided with Napoleon,
Mm.
and there
Well,
was
yeah,
this
because
fraction
just
that
to
was taking
interject,
place.
because Napoleon abolished all the Catholic ghettos, um, all the Jews that were in jails and stuff. He said, no, everybody's equal. And this, Napoleon had a lot of revolutionary ideas in his change of Europe. And so basically he's the first major leader to make Jewish people equal to any other Europeans with equal rights.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And that this is part of the reason why there was a fraction that was going on during that time period, which in the Jewish
Russia had the soul.
faith. And
Russia has soul. That stuff in the West is good, but it doesn't have soul.
Right. So there was a fraction that was taking place in the Jewish population in Europe uh, that were split, and they went. Some went on the Russian side, some went with with
Well, they went with the
Napoleon, but
an Orthodox Christian country, as Orthodoxy shares similar things, whether it's Jewish or Christian, or that's why they also.
right. I don't know if the Miller Ribby would have read Nostradamus. I don't know. Maybe he had. I don't know. But what he did say in his writings is that he viewed Napoleon as a butcher,
It's
and
the Antichrist.
that comes right. Yeah. No, right. It's like,
Nostradamus's first Antichrist is Napoleon.
and the Miller Ribby was saying, "Beware this
And
guy. This guy is not what he seems."
no, and not only that, but when he started to arrest popes and doing that, he literally, and when he invaded Spain, the whole Catholic priesthood was saying he is the Antichrist. And so a lot of people went to war in the guerrilla wars against the French because they felt they were fighting the forces of the Antichrist. And now I just heard about the angel of the abyss, and then how it rhymes, and everybody thought he's Apollyon. In Russia, they're saying he is Apollyon. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating, just as we're free flowing, so the audience can see that there are these kind of cultural things that uh, themes that kind of weave into this larger historical arc that we're in.
Mhm. Well, it's
It's
all
not
coming
just
to
a
a head.
movie.
It's all coming
It's
to a head. I mean, in a way, it's not surprising that people suddenly have an interest in doing Napoleonic films, because in a way, everybody's burned out on Hitler because Hitler is kind of just more pure evil. But I mean, I'm in an interesting thing with updating my book on the Antichrist prophecies of Nostradamus. I'm actually trying to help evolve my readers where I've been evolving with it, and realizing the center Antichrist, Hister, is pretty much, yeah, he's classic Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, evil. But there's a gray area.
Well, the thing that popped in my mind when you said that is that Hitler and Germany represented like a mechanized war. But when you're dealing with Napoleon, there's the horse.
Yeah.
There's a theme of the horse. And going back, and so I personally think we're in very tumultuous times. That would be how perhaps Christians define it as like the four horsemen kind of situation, where it's plague and famine and death, destruction. Right. So there's something about the horse and the times that we're in.
The horse is also representative of the 10th avatar, Kalki, in the Hindus. We are in the Kali Yuga. We're entering the Kali Yuga, the age of iron. And it's the four yugas, the great long periods of time. Now, the Hindus love to count bigger and bigger numbers. But when I look at history as it flows, I mean, the 10 avatars, very interesting how they parallel ancient atavistic memory, even of before we were people. One of the avatars was a turtle. That's reptiles, age of reptiles. The next avatar was a lion man, mammals. So those kalpas those ages are much longer. Kalpa would be the birth of the universe and when it retracts on itself, like in 30 billion years. So kalpa is much larger. But so then it became kind of godlike people like Rama, and then there's Krishna, and then Buddha, who was foreseen by the Hindus, but they thought he would revolutionize Brahmaism, which means the Brahma class. The special high class Brahmas. Well, he did, but not the way they projected. He basically revolutionized it by saying, if you're in your Buddha nature, you are all Brahmin. No untouchables, no kshatriya warriors, no mercantile. You are one in Buddha nature, which is like being the Brahma. And that really upset the Brahmins. And so they make it tricky now. They say, oh, well, Buddha was there I mean, the religions in the East are not as simple and direct as they are in the West. There's a lot of nuance and subtlety. So they said, oh, well, he was there to test people, to just a willfully false incarnation of God as an avatar. So, okay, that's gets a little too sophisticated for their own good. But so what you'll notice when it becomes human people like Krishna is that you can see a parallel in time which is far shorter in reality. It's 25 centuries, 2,500 years, which is called the wheel of Dharma. The wheel is pushed by a great master like Buddha, and then it begins to spin, and entropy makes it slow down more and more until finally there's a time for another great teacher, a world teacher, to push the wheel and start it spinning fresh again. And so it comes down to 25 centuries. So we have finished the 25 century cycle because Buddha was around in 500 BC. Year 2000 is roughly just like, so it converges with Joaquin de Fiore's very unusual heterodoxical theories of the 20 centuries of the Father. That would be what Christians call the Old Testament. The 20 centuries of the Son would be the New Testament, as the Christians call it from their point of view, not as a Nevi'im, and then the third is the Holy Spirit. It's the Trinity. The names of the Trinity are 3 steps in the evolution of the good news on earth. And so the holy, so the third is which interesting that it converges with a lot of things that are going on in Kabbalah and mystical Christianity and others, where God's access is immediate to your open heart, that you don't have to go through a middleman. And a lot of Kabbalists, my contacts in Jerusalem, are really saying, it's something far more, like Orthodox Jews and Torah Jews, which are totally dead set against Zionism. It's totally gone off off the track of the spiritual evolution of Judaism, the mystery of Judaism. And they're being beaten all the time by the Zionists in Jerusalem, and they just very peaceful. There they are, you know, black hats and long locks and all, and long beards like this, and they're just being very peaceful, just protesting. And you know, these cops come in, the Zionist guys are just beating them up like brown shirts all over again. You know, but they're Jews. You know? So it really shows in actions rather than statements, exactly what has been the concern of Torah Jews and early Zionists who are not politicized, that it's like a bunch of political minded people who don't really believe in Yahweh. They're not connected even to it. I mean, they're even openly saying in their quotes, more important than God, more important is the only thing that really exists, not God, not this, but the land, and that we control it and kick everybody out who's not exceptional like we are. And so in his unconscious statement, he's completely denying the religious center of Judaism, you know, the mother lode religion of the Western world, as is, you know, Hinduism and stuff is the Eastern world. I mean, so the roots are getting exposed, and I mean, those who have gone astray from roots of truth and things is being exposed. So it's I'm feeling, you know, I started feeling, I mean, last year it was difficult. I was thinking, you know, we might not make it. But now, oddly, as things are actually coming to a head, and on face value can look more potentially dangerous. Maybe I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid here, but I have this feeling that something changed in October. But that doesn't mean a whole lot of afterbirth. It doesn't have to get gooey and bloody and come vomiting out. You know.
Well, I think this is that dark cloud that I'm saying that started on December 1st and for the whole world, and this is going to gain momentum, and it's going to get darker, and that there's going to be these tests.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing is that I think this is where there's a positive, there's a silver lining in the cloud, right?
Oh, yes,
right?
it's a bigger play.
Yeah.
It's a bigger divine play. And I mean, I've been thinking about you and about what we talked about for the last 2 weeks, and really watching, yeah, here it is, but it didn't quite show itself off to what I expected. I expected like, oh, World War III, boom, bam, it's all done.
No.
But
This
no,
is the
it's
way
not. It's
no.
not.
This is
It's
going
a
to be this
travail,
is
which is a birth, and it's messy.
Yeah, you know, it's and the thing is that there are going to be these points in time. So there's like three things that are happening here, John. There's the sensitives that prepared themselves to be able to get some of this divine wisdom or divine understanding or knowledge through these influxes that are taking place through Kislev. All right. And that, you know, and we don't have that many days left of this.
No.
All right. And then it's lighting their internal menorah. All right. That will carry them on into this darkness that is over the rest of the world. Now, for the ones that are not sensitive, the ones that are not sensitive on this and did not prepare themselves for lighting of their own menorah, internal menorah, then what will happen is that there will be these moments in time throughout this Hebrew year, which goes all the way into 2024. Into September, right? So, and there are going to be points in time. I don't know those dates, but I suspect that there will be about 3 or 4 really important points within this arc year that we're talking about, where people could become better, and it's their choice. There's free will to be a better person, and if so, there'll be a blessing. But there's this, what I call the great disentanglement. So there's an entanglement of good and evil, right? And in people, right? And for for the Or Ein Sof to come down and go through its symptom that I was telling you about and produce and shine something, either curse or blessing, it has to do this disentanglement.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be there, and by disentangling, then you have the ones that should be blessed, and the ones that should be cursed, cursed. Now, the only way that I can explain what I'm saying is to use the comparison of what happened during the Noah's flood.
Mm-hmm.
Noah and his family had to box themselves in an ark, right? And there's some dimensions, and there's you can get really Kabbalistic with this, right? With space and time, right? And the religious dimension. So it's really 5-dimensional space. It's like a hypercube. So, and you're hiding in the hypercube, all right? And outside of that hypercube is a world that's being judged. While inside the hypercube, there's protection, there's a blessing. So this disentanglement, and another case in point with the disentanglement was what happened with the Paschal lamb sacrifice during Passover.
Yeah.
It was the Jews that put the blood from the Paschal lamb on the doorposts. They closed the door. They stayed indoors, and their family was protected, and their firstborn wasn't killed. But
very well done in the movie Cecil B. DeMille. That was one of the best scenes in that movie when the misty plague came in
it's
Egypt.
Strange it's strange that you say that, because this dark cloud that I was saying about December 1st, it's not like all of a sudden. It's misty, and it gets darker and thicker, but it only gets darker and thicker when the ones that have been disentangled, the ones that are going to be that are assigned the curse, if they don't go through some sort of repentance.
Which means to remember to become whole. And also the plague that beset Egypt, I would call it the plague of identity. It's like a mist. It has tendrils that unconsciously attach us to things that are only passing phenomenon in our hands, including our hands, these bodies, these minds, and that light, that lux eterna, that is coming in the more sensitive people, is something that is beyond the horizontal world that goes from here to there, life to death, love to hate, courage to fear. And so I'm harking back to hearing the voices going, oh, in the background in the neighborhood of Moses and his wife, and then there's a mist is coming, and it's like, it's a little bit like Halloween in Egypt, but those people in the distance going like that and disappearing. That was inspired. Another movie that I found really inspiring, because it was the movie Russell Crowe playing Noah. Did you ever see that?
No, I didn't see it.
God, because you're talking the whole thing inside the box and everything else. It's exactly like that in the movie.
Really? Because in the Sefer Yetzirah, it has in its first, it's either the first, I think it's the first section or the second section, and it's talking about in the first chapter. So it's like the first or second verse of the first chapter, and it's talking about these 5 dimensions where it's space, time, and soul. And it gets really weird. It's like it even gets weird where it's letter, number. So a letter, you have a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. You have a number, right? That letter. So that letter is space,
Mhm.
It's defining space, right? You're carving it out, right? And then the number is the
Abstract.
time, the
Yeah.
time, the time component. So now
Yes.
you have 4 dimensions, and
Yes.
then you have the it forms a text that has meaning,
Yeah.
which
A
is then
message.
the soul dimension.
Yeah.
So I
Oh
just
yeah.
it's
I
so
mean, he
it's
didn't go into the nitty-gritty of that, but the way the arc was, it really was like another world inside the flood of the 40 days and nights,
Mhm.
and the way it was built, and the way that I don't remember who directed it, but he obviously imbibed into the basic Noah's Ark story all the Jewish myths, a lot of Hasidic myths and things. I think when you're going to like, oh wow, it's like it literally somebody took all of that and made it work. It's and the world really looks like a pre-Adamic, even has that vibe about it. I mean, it's literally it's one of the most amazing kind of biblical movies that kind of added all the folklore
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
out of the main story of Genesis. It's the folklore that's from all different Jewish people. He gathered it all and put it and made it all work. And God, it was so wonderful.
Well,
Uh,
I'll try to maybe see it on Amazon Prime or something. But
Yeah, I love it. We ought to do a show where we have some feedback about it and we talk about it. I think
mhm.
Russell Crowe is remarkable in it. And the gal who played the girl interest in Harry Potter, the friend of Harry Potter who ended up with the redhead boy.
Mhm. Mhm.
She's one of the daughters of Moses, and that whole story arc with her, she really showed her chops as an actress in that. I mean, she really got to show what a great actress she is, and all grown up now. But and that I won't give it away, but it really played to Russell Crowe's big, burly, big-hearted guy to be Moses. He was perfect for it. And just like Commodus was brilliant as Joaquin Phoenix playing him, but you know, attack Napoleon. No, no. And God, it's a shame because I've seen how the direct. I haven't actually seen the director's cut yet of Kingdom of Heaven. Has a similar problem as Napoleon. He did a public release that was I mean, I loved it, but it had flaws, and a lot of people didn't get it and didn't think it was one of his best movies. Go see it. Ridley Scott's um, Kingdom of Heaven. Stars Legolas. He finally had his big starring role moment. He was very good in it. See that movie as a director's cut. It is one of his masterpieces that people don't know.
Mhm.
Now, there's some hope that a lot of the critics of Napoleon are saying, well, there's 2 hours missing. Maybe it'll be better. I don't think so. It's just be more of 2 hours wasted, unfortunately. And it's hard for me to say for the man who did, the prequel to Alien. That was remarkable science fiction. I mean, just absolutely out of the box. And also, one of the best Napoleon themed movies ever written and directed was his first film, which won all kinds of awards, The Duelist. That's a masterpiece. That's what broke him through in popularity. That's a fantastic movie. It's about all during the entire era of 12 years of Napoleonic Wars. There's a higher class officer who's a hussar, and there's a line hussar who's played by the Kill Bill's younger brother, John Carradine. His younger brother is now the only surviving brother from the father and stuff, because I saw John Carradine just before he died, and I almost met him. He was in the same bar.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing presence. I mean, it's and tall, like his father was. He was also a great character actor. But anyway, the youngest one did that as the duelist, and it was how this obsession, no matter how, all through the wars, if there was a peace period, these two would have a duel. and never got. Anyway, so it's an obsession thing. I won't say more, but from my knowledge of the Napoleonic eras and little details, that's why I'm kind of surprised that he got that so right, all the little details. Napoleon sinks or swims on the details, and I'm kind of shocked that he completely threw that out the window to his peril,
Mhm.
because Napoleon is a mess. It's a mess.
I mean, I kept on seeing news feeds saying that it wasn't, it wasn't very good, not to go see it. And I was
Well,
thinking about seeing it, but
well, I'm kind of waiting for the 4 hour, see if it's a little better. I love the actress who's playing Josephine. I kind of got into her in Fallout, in the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible one that's called Fallout, where they had that incredible fight on two helicopters in the mountains. Well, she kind of shows up as the head of a mafia kind of family, and she's got all these brothers, and they're all kind of over testosterone and all that, and she had this way of conveying her thoughts and energy right off the camera into you, that's really quite remarkable. And one of the best lines is she's kind of has this fling with Tom Cruise almost, and she's looking back at the family, and all standing there like, and she looks at them, she looks back at him kind of lovingly, and goes, family, what can you do? It's like, I said, man, this lady is great. So I might definitely see it. I'll commiserate with poor Joaquin Phoenix, who's one of my favorite actors, but not this one. But she might attract me to watch the whole movie. But there's the thing that happens is, from what it sounds like is, and what it looks like in the script and all this, she's there, and then she's gone. And it's like, so what? You know, the whole story arc just kind of went. Now maybe the director's cut doesn't do that, but it's funny because I thought, why do that? I mean, why make a release that's going to turn everybody away from watching the film? I mean, that's what happened to Kingdom of Heaven. He crumbled to a lot of people saying cut more and more of this to make it a certain length, and what happened is he cut out all the scenes that earn things. And it's almost like he's in the same trap with Napoleon. He's everybody, and because of the way the reviewers are saying, it's almost like, yeah, it's like, well, kind of like the last movie of the prequels, the Anakin Skywalker theory. One time I was kind of watching a overview of all of that trilogy, and because my own imagination, I had concocted scenes to earn it, to just see that movie was like one climax unearned after another, until the final fight on the lava planet and all of that. But it's almost like I one day I had a magical time where I managed to, in my own creativity, put all the scenes that were missing, like I'd already seen them before this thing came, and then it was like, wow, and then it really worked. But I had to kind of pretend that all those things that as a storyteller, I automatically do things like this, and all those things that were unearned, like, how does it happen that his wife leaves him because he's gone dark? That was just like one moment's this way, that moment.
right.
And then all the story arc of Obi-Wan's love for his Padawan, his disciple, and all the ways that went down. I mean, if I were to redo the whole thing with the emperor and how he convinced Anakin should have been Jesus Christ going dark, that he is the one to bring balance to the force, that it's Jesus Christ listened to Satan in the wilderness. That would be how I'd play it, and all for all the right reasons. Anakin took upon himself to reform the Jedis, who were, I mean, Lucas already kind of set that up. The Jedi were kind of rotting away. They're too ancient, and they were too political, and he was a rebel. What if we went all the way with that? What I
Right.
think the story would be, I mean, I have this funny, I have this science fiction story called, oh, I won't tell the name because somebody might take it, but um, there's these elf-like humans. I mean, my whole idea is kind of take all the things that you usually um, just take for granted in science fiction, and you say, no, it never happened. Light speed never happened. You know, none of that happened. So what did happen is they became immortal. So they could take the time to on sublight and in some meteor somewhere to go out and find other planets and all that. And so it would be based on the one of Nostradamus's far distant future prophecies that is dated for the year 3797, where the Earth something happened to destroy the sun, and these two parts of humanity, one went to Aquarius. He says that, he said they'll go to Aquarius for and be there for some time. The others will go to the planets around the constellation of Cancer, and they will live time immemorial. So my idea is that somehow, after all these ages, the people that were in Aquarius are starting to approach the people in Cancer, but they're dark, they're evil, and so planets are starting to wink out in the solar system, and they can't quite explain why. So the man and wife were these elves who have a passion for 20th century, 21st century science fiction. A lot of the time when they have nothing else to do, if they're not making love or if they're not dealing with other stuff, and it takes years before there's a lot of action and stuff, because it's everything's as fast as going to Pluto was for Voyager. So but because they're just about immortal, unless they're blown up or something like that, they live forever almost, and they can keep replicating themselves and all that. So they don't have a problem with that, and they don't have a problem with long time, but they love to tell stories. And then I'd have these two arguing. The subplot is they'd be arguing about all the science fiction movies I love that kind of went off in the wrong direction. And like one of them would be them remaking the Anakin Skywalker. Well, no, this is what I should have done. So it's kind of comic, some of my science fiction novels.
It sounds kind of cool. Well,
Yeah,
well,
it's I have about eight of them.
and because
But
there's so many sci-fi movies out there. I mean, it's an infinite amount of material to revisit.
oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
why do so many great time travel movies really contradict themselves in the way they time travel? It's like, now Millennium didn't. Um, that was actually quite good. In fact, the book is fantastic. That's oh god, this guy who wrote Demon and the trilogy and on the moons of Saturn or something like that. I can't think of his name right now, but one of my favorite authors, science fiction authors. Um, anyway, he there's the movie Millennium where they get on planes, these guys from the girls dressed in stewardesses outfits and all, and they get on planes and they somehow manage to put everybody to sleep and replace them with these kind of organic appearances of people called wimps. And and because they know this plane's going to crash, so they make sure that they don't get the pilots yet. First, they put everybody to sleep in the compartment, including the stewardesses, and then they replace the stewardesses, and they've got their little ray guns and all that, and so they make them in such a way that when the plane burns up, it'll look like just human remains. But so they carry all the people off into the porthole. And then there was a mistake. One of the pilots goes to take a leak. He walks out and sees them and all the wimps. And it gets all messed up. And then what happens is one of the people has to stay and be wimped out with everybody else. And one of their things for the future ends up staying in that period of time. And then they have to go back and find it, because if it doesn't stop, it'll cause a time wave that'll take a while to go through all the future and the past and future and change everything. And that's marvelous science fiction. And I can't think of his name right now. Very famous. I mean, there's probably people screaming, well, will be when this is broadcasted, it's him, it's his So I apologize in advance.
Oh, we've been going for yeah, a little bit, yeah, 2 hours and 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So, for the ones that are watching, the link for John's website is in the description of this video and all of the videos that I've done with John, especially this series. This is number 4.
Yeah.
And please click the link. It'll take you to his website, and you can, purchase his periodical. His month. You have it's
The Hogue
bi-weekly.
Prophecy Report. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fully illustrated. You get it in an email as an attachment. So download. It's a great way. It's slightly low tech, but it prevents me from being shadow banned, and I can speak my First Amendment right to you without some snooty something in Facebook land or Zuckerberg land saying, no, the Atlantic Council does not approve. We won't. We're all Raytheon and NATO and all that, and retired CIA heads and all. So we should have a expertise on freedom of speech, shouldn't we? How to suppress it.
Exactly. So, and also you do readings, so they can
Yes.
schedule for a reading. And it's at the end of the year. It's probably best to get your reading to figure
Well,
out
yeah,
what's going
actually,
on
I
in
put an
2024.
APB out, and now I'm starting. So yeah, this would be a good time to get a reading because people are starting to say, "Hey, I have a reading." So,
Exactly.
lock down your reading by. What'll happen is that you'll see and down there you'll see a little ad and there's a little email you click on Hogue's readings, and what all you need to do is put Hogue reading in the subject line, and I'll know immediately what it is, and I'll immediately get back as soon as I see it and give you the overview and how to pay it on PayPal and all of that, and the fact it has a astrology opening. Kind of, we're looking at the Kelly Blue Book of your birth chart, which is your body, mind, vehicle strengths and weaknesses, and how you can drive as a soul your car through life. I mean, case in point, I'm literally hours away from having almost exactly all of Bill Gates's astrology at birth, because we were born, I think, within a 6-hour period between each other on October 29th, 1955. So how can two people be so utterly different? Well, because of the soul driver. And that's the key. So a lot of people can technically understand astrology, but the real gift is when you can feel the soul driver, and it makes the whole difference in how the astrology I had, if it were somebody else's, they wouldn't have survived to 20 years old. But in my case, since this is a life of finishing things, it has been a blessing, this chart with no trines.
Well, I mean, I recommend to get the reading. I've had
Yeah,
one
you've
done.
done it. He knows.
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah, so I mean, definitely the link is in the description of this video and all the videos that I've done with John. So please click the link and go to his website, sign up for the periodical, purchase the books, and do the readings. It helps support John. So thank you for coming on to the show, John. Is there anything else that you want to add before we close it up?
Nope. I think we travel a lot of different places today. Suddenly dropped into movie land.
Right.
I was born in Hollywood, California. I can't help it.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were born in California.
Yeah, I was born in East Hollywood, the Cedar Sinai.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
A goy from Senior Sinai.
So wave goodbye or say goodbye to the audience before we stop the recording.
Goodbye, audience.
Okay. All right. Let me stop the recording here.